The telegram arrived on the day Rebecca Norton was supposed to be married, but instead of wedding bells, she heard only the hollow echo of her own footsteps in an empty church. She stood there in Gila City, Arizona Territory in the spring of 1882, clutching the wrinkled paper that had changed everything. The words blurred as tears threatened again, though she had thought herself all cried out. Gone to California, cannot marry you, someone else. Sorry. 10 words to destroy years of planning, years of dreaming, years of believing Thomas had loved her as much as she loved him. Rebecca walked out of that church with her head high, even as the whispers followed her down the dusty main street. At 23, she had waited longer than most women to marry, convinced that Thomas was worth the wait while he established himself as a surveyor. Now she felt like a fool. Her cream-colored dress, the one she had sewn by candlelight for months, seemed to mock her with every rustle of fabric. The boarding house where she had been staying felt suffocating. Mrs. Henderson, the proprietress, had been kind but pitying, and Rebecca could not bear another day of those sympathetic looks. She needed to do something, to be somewhere else, to find a purpose beyond the shattered remains of her future. That was how she found herself at the Gila City General Store 2 days later, staring at a notice board covered with various announcements. One caught her eye. Cook needed at the Double Cross Ranch, room and board provided. Inquire with Clayton Fletcher. Rebecca had always been good with cooking. Her mother had taught her everything before the fever took her 5 years ago. Her father had followed her mother within the year, leaving Rebecca alone except for Thomas. Except Thomas had never really been hers at all. She copied down the directions to the Double Cross Ranch and made her decision. There was nothing keeping her in town anymore. No family, no fiancé, no friends who did not look at her with pity. At least at her ranch she could work hard enough to forget, at least for a few hours each day. The ride out to the ranch took most of the morning. Rebecca had sold nearly everything she owned to buy the horse and supplies she would need. The cream-colored dress was packed away at the bottom of her trunk, something she could not bring herself to throw away, but could not bear to look at either. The landscape of Arizona Territory stretched before her, vast and unforgiving yet beautiful in its stark way. The Gila River wound through the valley, giving life to cottonwoods and willows along its banks. In the distance, mountains rose purple and hazy in the spring heat. The air smelled of creosote and dust. The Double Cross Ranch sat in a valley with good grazing land and access to water from a creek that fed into the river. Rebecca could see cattle scattered across the range as she approached, dark shapes against the brown and green landscape. The ranch house itself was larger than she had expected, built of adobe with a wooden porch that wrapped around the front. Several outbuildings dotted the property, including a bunkhouse, a barn, and what looked like a smokehouse. A man emerged from the barn as she rode up. He was tall, with broad shoulders and the lean build of someone who worked hard every day. His hat was pulled low against the sun, shadowing his face until he looked up at her approach. Rebecca felt her breath catch unexpectedly. The man had striking features, weathered by sun and wind but undeniably handsome. His eyes were a startling gray-green, the color of sage after rain. He looked to be perhaps 28 or 29, old enough to have experience but young enough that his movements held easy grace. "Can I help you, miss?" His voice was deep and warm, with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas origins. "I am looking for Clayton Fletcher. I saw the notice about a cook position." The man's eyebrows rose slightly, and something that might have been relief crossed his face. "I am Clayton Fletcher." "You are interested in the job?" "Yes, sir." "My name is Rebecca Norton. I am a good cook, and I am not afraid of hard work." Clayton studied her for a long moment. Rebecca kept her spine straight and her chin up, refusing to show any of the desperation she felt. She needed this job, needed the distance from town and the pitying looks. "Can you cook for 10 men with appetites like wolves?" "I can." "Can you handle being the only woman on a working ranch with a crew of cowboys?" "I can take care of myself, Mr. Fletcher." Something in her tone must have convinced him because he nodded slowly. "The pay is $30 a month plus room and board. You get the room off the kitchen. It is not fancy, but it is clean and private. You cook 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, though the men are usually out on the range for midday. Breakfast at 5, supper at 6. You keep the kitchen and your room clean, I keep the rest of the house. You live in the main house." "I do." "My father built this ranch, and when he died 2 years ago, it came to me. I live in one wing, you would have the room off the kitchen, and the men have the bunkhouse." "Is that arrangement acceptable?" Rebecca considered. It was unusual but not improper, given the separate quarters. "And beggars could not be choosers." "Yes, that is acceptable." "When can you start?" "Today, if you need me to." For the first time, Clayton smiled, and the expression transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made Rebecca's heart skip unexpectedly. She pushed the feeling away firmly. She was done with men and dreams of romance. Today would be perfect. "The men have been eating my cooking for 3 weeks since the last cook left to get married, and I think they are about ready to mutiny. Let me help you with your things." Clayton took her trunk as if it weighed nothing and led her into the house. The interior was surprisingly well kept for a bachelor household. The main room held sturdy furniture, a stone fireplace, and windows that let in the afternoon light. He led her through to a large kitchen with a wood-burning stove, a pump for water right at the sink, a long work table, and shelves stocked with supplies. "The door there leads to your room," Clayton said, nodding toward a door on the far side of the kitchen. "The men eat in the bunkhouse. You just ring the bell on the porch when meals are ready, and they will come get the food. I usually eat in here if that is all right. If you would rather I ate with the men, I can." "This is your house, Mr. Fletcher. You should eat where you are comfortable." He set her trunk down and turned to face her. In the afternoon light streaming through the kitchen window, Rebecca could see that his eyes held a kindness that matched the strength in his features. "Call me Clayton, and I will call you Rebecca if I may. We are not formal out here." "That is fine." "The men will be coming in around 6. Think you can manage something for tonight?" Rebecca surveyed the kitchen with a practiced eye. "I can manage." Clayton nodded and headed back outside, leaving Rebecca alone in her new domain. She opened her trunk and changed into a simple work dress, then began exploring the kitchen in earnest. The pantry was well stocked with basics: flour, salt, sugar, lard, dried beans, coffee. The root cellar held potatoes, onions, and a few wrinkled apples. There was a good supply of bacon and salt pork in the smokehouse, and fresh beef hung in the cooling shed. She could work with this. By 6 o'clock, Rebecca had managed to produce a meal of beef steaks, fried potatoes, biscuits, and gravy. It was simple but filling, the kind of food working men needed. She rang the bell and watched through the window as cowboys emerged from various parts of the ranch, heading toward the bunkhouse. Clayton appeared in the kitchen doorway, hat in hand. "It smells amazing in here. Sit down." "I will get your plate. I can serve myself. You have been working hard all afternoon." "It is my job to feed you, Mr. Fletcher." "Clayton," she corrected when he raised an eyebrow. She fixed him a generous plate and set it at the head of the table, then poured coffee from the pot she had kept warm on the stove. Clayton watched her with an expression she could not quite read. "Are you not eating?" "I will eat after you are done." "That is foolish." "Sit down and eat with me, Rebecca. You work just as hard as anyone today." There was something in his tone that brooked no argument. Rebecca fixed herself a smaller plate and sat at the opposite end of the table, acutely aware of the intimacy of sharing a meal alone with this man she had just met. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Clayton said, "This is the best meal I have had in a month. The men are going to be singing your praises. It is just simple food. Simple food done right is worth more than fancy food done poorly." He paused. "What brings you out to a ranch, if you do not mind me asking? You do not seem like someone who has been working cattle all her life." Rebecca's hand tightened on her fork. "I needed a change, a fresh start." Clayton studied her with those perceptive eyes, and she had the feeling he saw more than she wanted him to. But he only nodded. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what a person needs. They finished the meal with occasional comments about the ranch, the work, the weather. Clayton told her about the crew, giving her names and brief descriptions so she would know who was who. There was Miguel, the segundo or second in command, who had worked for Clayton's father. There was young Billy, only 19 and still learning the ropes. There was old George, who had been a cowboy for 40 years and had stories for days. "They are good men," Clayton said, "but they are still men. If any of them give you trouble, you tell me immediately. I can handle myself." "I do not doubt it. But this is my ranch, and the people who work here deserve to feel safe. That includes you." Something in his quiet certainty made Rebecca feel safer than she had in days. She nodded, and Clayton smiled again, that transformative expression that made something flutter in her chest. After Clayton left to check on the men, Rebecca cleaned up the kitchen and explored her room. It was small but clean, as promised, with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the eastern hills. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses on pegs along the wall and setting her mother's Bible on the dresser. The cream-colored dress she left in the trunk, folded carefully at the bottom where she would not have to look at it. That first week at the Double Cross Ranch passed in a blur of work. Rebecca rose before dawn to start breakfast, spent her days preparing food and keeping the kitchen clean, and fell into bed exhausted each night. But it was good work, purposeful work, and she found herself thinking less and less about Thomas and what might have been. The cowboys were respectful, thanking her for the meals and complimenting her cooking. Miguel, a man in his 40s with silver threading through his dark hair, told her that she was the best cook they had ever had. Young Billy blushed every time he came to fetch the food. Old George regaled her with stories whenever she had a moment to listen. But it was Clayton who occupied more and more of her thoughts, much as she tried to prevent it. He was unfailingly kind but not condescending. He treated her as an equal, asking her opinions on household matters and listening carefully to her answers. He often helped her carry heavy pots or haul water, waving off her protests with a grin. And he always ate dinner with her in the kitchen, their conversations ranging from the trivial to the surprisingly deep. She learned that he had grown up on this ranch, that his mother had died when he was young, that his father had been a hard man but a fair one. She learned that he loved the land, the work, the cattle, with a passion that lit up his face when he talked about it. She learned that he read books in the evenings, poetry and philosophy mixed in with practical manuals on ranching. "My father thought reading was a waste of time for a rancher," Clayton told her one evening as they lingered over coffee. "But my mother loved books. She taught me to read before she died, and I never stopped. Sometimes I think it is the only part of her I have left." "What was she like?" Rebecca asked softly. "Beautiful, kind. She saw the good in everyone, even when they did not deserve it. She used to sing while she worked." Clayton's eyes grew distant. I still hear her sometimes in my memory, singing in this very kitchen. She sounds wonderful, she was. He focused on Rebecca again. What about your parents? Rebecca told him about her mother, about learning to cook at her side, about the way her mother could make even the simplest meal feel special. She told him about her father, quiet and steady, who had seemed to lose his will to live after her mother died. I am sorry, Clayton said. It is hard to lose the people who anchor us. Yes, yes, it is. She did not tell him about Thomas. That wound was still too raw, too embarrassing. She had been so certain that she was building a life with someone who loved her, only to discover she had been building castles in the air. 2 weeks after Rebecca arrived at the ranch, a dust storm rolled through the valley. The sky turned brown and the wind howled, driving grit into every crack and crevice. Rebecca watched through the kitchen window as the men secured the animals and battened down the buildings. Clayton was the last to come in, his face covered with a bandana and his eyes squinted against the blowing dust. He pulled off the bandana and coughed, then went straight to the pump to wash his face and hands. It is going to be a rough one, he said. The men are all secure in the bunkhouse. We will just have to wait it out. Rebecca had already started preparing a stew, something that could simmer for hours and feed everyone whenever the storm passed. She had learned quickly that ranch life meant adapting to whatever circumstances arose. The storm lasted through the afternoon and into the evening. Rebecca lit lamps as the dust blocked out the sun, creating an eerie twilight in the middle of the day. Clayton worked on ranch accounts at the kitchen table, his brow furrowed in concentration. Rebecca found herself sneaking glances at him as she worked, noting the way he chewed on the end of his pencil when he was thinking, the way his hair fell across his forehead when he bent over the ledger. She was falling for him. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Despite all her resolutions to be done with romance, despite the pain that still lingered from Thomas's betrayal, she was falling for Clayton Fletcher. It terrified her. Rebecca, Clayton's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Are you all right? Yes, I am fine, just tired from the dust. He studied her for a moment, then closed his ledger and stood. Let us take a break. I think we both could use some coffee. He poured for both of them before she could protest, then settled back at the table. Tell me something, he said. What did you dream about before you came here? What did you want for your life? The question caught her off guard. For a moment, she considered deflecting, but something in Clayton's open expression made her want to be honest. I wanted what most women want, I suppose. A home, a family, someone to build a life with. She stared into her coffee cup. I thought I had found that. I was engaged to be married. The wedding was planned, the dress was made. And then, on the day of the wedding, I received a telegram saying he had changed his mind. He had gone to California. He had found someone else. She heard Clayton's sharp intake of breath but did not look up. Everyone in town knew. Everyone saw me waiting in that church. I could not stay there anymore with all those pitying looks, so I came here. Silence stretched between them. Then Clayton said quietly, he was a fool. Rebecca's eyes flew up to meet his. Clayton leaned forward, his gaze intense. Any man who could abandon you like that, who could throw away what you offered, is a fool. I am sorry he hurt you, Rebecca, but I am not sorry it brought you here. Her heart was pounding. Clayton. I know it is too soon. I know you are still healing. But I need you to know that some men see the treasure when it is right in front of them. Some men know how to hold on to what matters. Before she could respond, a crash sounded from outside. Clayton was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. One of the shutters tore loose on the barn. I need to secure it before the whole thing rips off. You cannot go out in this storm. If that shutter goes, it could damage the barn or hurt the animals. I will be fast. He grabbed his hat and bandana. "Stay inside, Rebecca. I will be right back." He was gone before she could argue further, vanishing into the brown maelstrom beyond the door. Rebecca stood frozen for a moment, fear clutching at her chest. Then she moved, gathering clean cloths and heating water, preparing for whatever might happen. It felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes before Clayton stumbled back through the door. He was covered in dust and had a gash on his forehead that was bleeding freely. "Oh my goodness, Clayton," Rebecca rushed to him, guiding him to a chair. "What happened?" "Got hit by a piece of flying debris. I am all right, just a scratch." "That is more than a scratch. Hold still." She carefully cleaned the wound, her fingers gentle as Clayton winced. The gash was not as bad as it had first appeared, but it would need bandaging. She worked quickly and efficiently, acutely aware of Clayton's eyes on her face. "You are good at this," he said softly. "My mother taught me basic doctoring. Living out here, you never know when you will need it." "Your mother taught you well." Rebecca finished bandaging his forehead and started to step back, but Clayton caught her hand. His palm was rough with calluses but warm, and his touch sent electricity up her arm. "Thank you," he said, "for taking care of me. It is nothing. It is not nothing." His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. "Rebecca, I meant what I said before. I know it is too soon, but I need you to know that I see you. Not the woman who was left behind, but the strong, capable, beautiful woman standing right here. And if you would give me a chance when you are ready, I would like to show you what it means to be cherished." Tears pricked at Rebecca's eyes. "I do not know if I can trust again. What if I am wrong again? What if I let myself believe and then? Then I will prove to you every single day that you are not wrong." Clayton stood, still holding her hand. "I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow, Rebecca. I am not even asking you to make any promises. I am just asking if you will let me try. Let me show you what you deserve." She looked up into his eyes, those gray-green eyes that had come to mean safety and home, and felt something in her chest crack open. The part of her that had closed off after Thomas's betrayal, that had sworn never to be vulnerable again, began to cautiously unfurl. "I am frightened," she whispered. "I know. I am a little frightened too." "You are," Clayton smiled, a tender expression that made her knees weak. "Rebecca, you walked into my life like a dust storm yourself, unexpected and powerful. You have turned this house into a home in just 2 weeks. You have made me think about futures I had given up on. Of course I am frightened, but I think the best things in life require a little fear." "I do not know what to say." "Then do not say anything yet. Just think about it. And know that, whatever you decide, you have a home here for as long as you want it." The storm finally passed as evening turned to night. The world emerged scrubbed clean, the air crystalline and the stars impossibly bright. Rebecca lay in her narrow bed and thought about Clayton's words, about the way his hand had felt holding hers, about the possibility of dreaming new dreams. She had been so focused on grieving what she had lost that she had not considered she might find something better. But Clayton Fletcher was nothing like Thomas. Where Thomas had been smooth and charming, Clayton was steady and genuine. Where Thomas had made promises about the future, Clayton showed his character through his actions every day. Could she really let herself hope again? The next morning, Rebecca rose before dawn as usual and started breakfast. She was pulling biscuits from the oven when Clayton emerged from his room, his hair still damp from washing. "Good morning," he said. "How did you sleep?" "Well enough." "How is your head?" "Barely hurts." He touched the bandage gingerly. "Thanks to your excellent care." They moved around the kitchen in comfortable silence as Rebecca finished preparing breakfast and Clayton made the coffee. It struck her how easy it had become, this domestic routine they had fallen into. How natural it felt to share space with him. When she rang the bell for the men, Clayton caught her hand as she walked past. "Rebecca, I want you to know that nothing has to change between us. I meant what I said about you having a home here. There is no pressure." She looked at their joined hands, his large and rough, hers smaller but just as work-worn. Then she looked up at his face, at the honest concern in his eyes. "What if I do not want things to stay the same?" she said softly. "What if I want them to change?" Hope blazed across Clayton's features. "Then we will let them change, as slow or as fast as you need." Miguel appeared at the kitchen door to collect the breakfast, and they broke apart. But the connection remained, a thread of possibility stretching between them. Over the following weeks, Rebecca felt herself slowly opening up like a flower toward the sun. Clayton courted her with a patience and thoughtfulness that took her breath away. He brought her wildflowers from the range, awkwardly arranged in an old jelly jar. He showed her the secret places on the ranch. A grove of cottonwoods by the creek where birds sang at dawn, a hilltop where you could see for miles across the valley, a natural spring that formed a perfect pool of clear water. They talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams. Clayton told her about his plans for the ranch, his hopes to build the herd and maybe one day have the biggest operation in the territory. Rebecca told him about her love of cooking, how she experimented with recipes and dreamed of having a kitchen garden full of herbs and vegetables. "We have the space for a garden," Clayton said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Behind the house, where there is good sun and access to water. If you want to plant one, I will help you build the beds." "Really? You would not mind?" "Rebecca, anything that makes you happy makes me happy. Besides, fresh vegetables would be a nice change from dried and canned everything." They started the garden the following week. Clayton was as good as his word, building raised beds from scrap lumber and hauling composted manure to enrich the soil. Rebecca planted seeds she had ordered from town: tomatoes, beans, squash, lettuce, carrots, herbs. She worked the soil with her hands, feeling connected to the earth in a way she never had before. As the spring turned to early summer, Rebecca found herself laughing more, smiling more, feeling lighter than she had in years. The pain of Thomas's betrayal had not disappeared entirely, but it had faded to a distant ache, like an old scar that only hurt when it rained. One evening, as they sat together on the porch after dinner, Clayton reached over and took her hand. It had become a familiar gesture between them, this casual touching that spoke of growing intimacy. "Rebecca," he said, "there is something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" "I am in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, stark and beautiful. Rebecca felt tears prick at her eyes. "I know it has only been 2 months," Clayton continued. "I know that might seem fast to some people, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you hum when you are cooking. I love how you are not afraid of hard work. I love everything about you, Rebecca Norton." A tear slipped down Rebecca's cheek. Clayton reached up and gently wiped it away. "I am not asking you to say it back," he said. "I am not asking you for anything except the truth. Do you think you could ever love me? Not now, maybe, but someday. Because if there is a chance, I will wait. I will wait as long as it takes." Rebecca looked at this man who had given her a home when she had nowhere to go, who had been patient with her broken heart, who had shown her through 1,000 small actions what real love looked like. And she realized something. "Clayton, you do not have to wait. I already love you." His eyes widened. "You do?" "I think I started loving you that first day when you smiled at me in the barn. I was just too afraid to admit it, even to myself. But yes, I love you. I love your kindness and your strength. I love the way you care for this land and the people who work it. I love how you make me feel safe and cherished. I love you, Clayton Fletcher." Clayton stood, pulling her to her feet. "Can I kiss you? I wish you would." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle, and lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was sweet and tender, a promise of love and devotion. Rebecca felt the last walls around her heart crumble, leaving her vulnerable but not afraid. Because this was Clayton, and Clayton would never hurt her the way Thomas had. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Clayton rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered. "I know it is fast, but I do not want to waste another day. Marry me, Rebecca. Let us build a life together. Let us have a family and grow old watching the sunset from this porch. Let us dream together now." Those words, "Let us dream together now," pierced straight through to Rebecca's soul. She had been grieving her lost dreams of marriage for so long, mourning what she thought she had lost. But Clayton was offering her something better, not a resurrection of old dreams, but the creation of new ones, dreams they would build together. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Clayton let out a whoop of joy and spun her around, making her laugh and cling to his shoulders. When he set her down, he kissed her again, deeper this time with a passion that made heat bloom in her core. "How soon?" he asked. "When can we get married?" "As soon as you like." "Next week." "Let us get married next week. I will ride into town tomorrow and make arrangements. We can have the ceremony here at the ranch. Nothing fancy, just us and the men and a preacher. What do you say?" Rebecca thought about the cream-colored dress still packed in her trunk. She had made it with such hope, such certainty that she knew what her future held. But that future had crumbled. This new future with Clayton felt more solid, more real than anything Thomas had ever offered. "I say yes. Next week is perfect." They spent the rest of the evening on the porch, talking about their future. Clayton wanted children, at least 3 or 4 if they were blessed. Rebecca wanted to expand the garden, maybe even raise chickens and sell eggs in town. They talked about improvements to the ranch, about maybe building a larger house someday if their family grew. "I want to be a good husband to you," Clayton said as the stars came out overhead. "I want to be worthy of the trust you are placing in me." "You already are, Clayton. You have been from the beginning." The following morning, Clayton rode into Gila City to make arrangements with the preacher and file for the marriage license. Rebecca spent the day in a daze, hardly able to believe that she was really getting married in a week. The men noticed her distraction and teased her good-naturedly when Clayton announced the news at dinner. "About time, boss," Miguel said with a grin. "We all could see you were smitten from day one." "She is too good for you," old George added, winking at Rebecca. "But I suppose you will do." Young Billy blushed crimson and stammered out his congratulations, unable to meet Rebecca's eyes. That evening, Rebecca opened her trunk and pulled out the cream-colored dress. She held it up, examining it in the lamplight. It really was beautiful, all those hours of careful stitching evident in every seam. It seemed a shame to waste it, but more than that, she realized she wanted to wear it. She had made this dress with love and hope, and those feelings had not been wasted just because Thomas had not deserved them. She could reclaim this dress, reclaim the joy she had felt making it, and wear it to marry a man who truly loved her. Rebecca spent the next few days altering the dress, taking it in here and letting it out there, making it perfect. She also worked on a special meal for the wedding celebration, planning a feast that would show the men how much she appreciated their support. Clayton was busy too, cleaning up the ranch and building an arch out of branches where they could stand for the ceremony. He enlisted the men's help and they worked with enthusiasm, clearly happy for their boss. The night before the wedding, Clayton and Rebecca sat on the porch as had become their habit. He held her hand, his thumb tracing familiar patterns on her skin. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little," Rebecca admitted. "Not about marrying you, I am certain about that, but I keep thinking about the last time I was supposed to get married and how it fell apart. What if something goes wrong again?" Clayton turned to face her, his expression serious. "Rebecca, look at me. I am not Thomas. I am not going to change my mind or run away. Tomorrow, I am going to stand under that arch and marry you, and nothing short of death is going to stop me. Do you understand? I do. I love you, and I am going to keep loving you for the rest of my life. That is not going to change. Not tomorrow, not next week, not 50 years from now." Rebecca leaned in and kissed him softly. "I love you too. I am sorry I am being foolish." "You are not being foolish. You are being human. You were hurt badly, and it is natural to be afraid. But I promise you, Rebecca, I will spend the rest of my life proving that you can trust me." The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. Rebecca rose early, as always, but she felt too nervous to eat. She spent the morning preparing food for the celebration, trying to keep her hands busy. When the time came to get dressed, she carefully put on the cream-colored dress that had once represented heartbreak, but now represented hope. She studied herself in the small mirror in her room. The dress fit perfectly, and despite her nervousness, her eyes were bright with happiness. She had never felt more beautiful. A knock sounded on her door. "Rebecca," Clayton's voice was muffled. "The preacher is here. Are you ready?" "Ready." She opened the door to find Clayton standing there in his best suit, his hair neatly combed and his face freshly shaved. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You are beautiful," he breathed. "The most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "Thank you. You look very handsome yourself." He offered his arm, and she took it, letting him lead her outside. The men were all gathered near the arch Clayton had built, dressed in their Sunday best. The preacher, a kindly older man named Reverend Williams, stood waiting with his Bible. As Rebecca and Clayton walked toward the arch, she felt her nervousness melt away. This was right. This was real. This was nothing like the disaster that had almost happened in town. This was two people who truly loved each other, choosing to build a life together. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Reverend Williams spoke about love and commitment, about the sacred bond of marriage. Clayton's voice was strong and sure as he said his vows, his eyes never leaving Rebecca's face. When it was her turn, Rebecca spoke from the heart. "Clayton, when I came to this ranch, I thought my life was over. I thought all my dreams had died, but you showed me that I was wrong. You showed me that I could dream again, bigger and better dreams than I ever had before. I promise to love you, to stand by your side, to build a life with you that is full of joy and purpose. I promise to be your partner in all things. I love you, and I always will." There were tears in Clayton's eyes as he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger. She did the same for him, marveling at how right it felt. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Williams said with a smile. "Clayton, you may kiss your bride." Clayton pulled Rebecca into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, not caring that they had an audience. The men cheered and whistled, and Rebecca laughed against Clayton's lips. "Hello, Mrs. Fletcher," Clayton murmured. "Hello, Mr. Fletcher." The celebration that followed was raucous and joyful. The men devoured the feast Rebecca had prepared and toasted the couple with generous amounts of whiskey. Even the preacher stayed for dinner, clearly enjoying himself. As the sun set, Miguel brought out a guitar and began to play, and several of the men sang along. Clayton pulled Rebecca into a dance, holding her close as they swayed to the music. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought I could be." "Good, because I plan to make you even happier." As the evening wore on and the stars came out, the men gradually drifted off to the bunkhouse, leaving Clayton and Rebecca alone on the porch. Clayton scooped her up in his arms, making her squeal with laughter. "What are you doing, carrying my bride over the threshold? It is tradition. He carried her into the house, but instead of setting her down, he kept going, carrying her to his room. Their room now, Rebecca realized with a thrill. Clayton set her gently on the bed and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Rebecca, I need you to know that we do not have to do anything tonight. I know this is all new and I do not want to rush you." Rebecca reached out and cupped his face, feeling the slight rasp of stubble under her palm. "Clayton, I am your wife now and I want this. I want you." The look in his eyes turned molten. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." What followed was tender and sweet, Clayton taking his time to show Rebecca with his body what he had already told her with his words. He was gentle and patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished every moment. And when they finally came together, Rebecca felt something slot into place deep in her soul, as if she had been incomplete her whole life and only now became whole. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Clayton's arm around her and her head on his chest. "I love you," he murmured into her hair. "I love you too." "Any regrets?" "Not a single one." The summer passed in a haze of happiness. Rebecca thrived as the lady of the ranch, managing the household and continuing to cook for the men. Her garden flourished, providing fresh vegetables that the men devoured enthusiastically. She and Clayton fell into an easy partnership, working together to keep the ranch running smoothly. Their nights were private and passionate, Clayton showing Rebecca depths of pleasure she had never imagined. But it was not just the physical intimacy that deepened their bond. It was the quiet conversations in the dark, the laughter over breakfast, the way they could communicate with just a look. In August, Rebecca realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first, she tried not to get her hopes up. But when another month passed and her breasts grew tender, she knew. She was carrying Clayton's child. She told him one evening after dinner, nervous about his reaction. They had talked about wanting children, but she had not expected it to happen quite so soon. Clayton's face went through a series of expressions: shock, wonder, and finally pure joy. "Really? You are certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor, but all the signs are there." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining with tears. "Happy? Rebecca, I am the happiest man alive. You have given me everything I ever wanted, and things I did not even know to dream about." Over the following months, Clayton became almost comically protective. He did not want Rebecca lifting anything heavy, doing any strenuous work, or even standing for too long. She laughed at his hovering but secretly loved it, loved how much he cared. The men were excited too. Miguel immediately began carving a cradle, working on it in his spare time. Old George knitted tiny booties, a skill he claimed to have learned from his grandmother. Young Billy turned scarlet every time the baby was mentioned, but offered to help with anything they needed. As Rebecca's belly grew, she and Clayton spent evenings planning for their child. They talked about names, about how to raise a family in the sometimes harsh world of the Arizona Territory, about what kind of parents they wanted to be. "I want our children to know they are loved," Clayton said one night, his hand resting on Rebecca's swollen belly. "I want them to feel safe and supported no matter what. They will. We will make sure of it." In late March of 1883, after a long and difficult labor, Rebecca gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Clayton was there the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement, his face pale with worry. When the midwife finally placed the baby in Rebecca's arms, she felt a love so fierce it took her breath away. The infant had a shock of dark hair and Clayton's gray-green eyes. "He is perfect," Clayton breathed, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "You are perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for this gift." They named him Daniel after Clayton's father, with the middle name Thomas after Rebecca's father. As Rebecca held her son, Clayton sitting beside her on the bed with his arm around them both, she felt a profound sense of peace. A year ago, she had been standing in an empty church, her dreams shattered. She had thought her life was over, that she would never find happiness or love. But she had been so wrong. This was happiness. This was love. This tiny family they had created, this life they were building together, this was more than she had ever dared to dream. "What are you thinking about?" Clayton asked softly, watching her face. "I am thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought I knew what my life would look like. But that was such a small dream compared to this. Compared to you and Daniel and this life we have together." Clayton kissed her forehead. "Sometimes the best blessings are the ones we never saw coming. I was so focused on grieving what I had lost that I almost missed what I could gain. But you did not miss it. You were brave enough to take a chance, to let yourself hope again, and look where it brought us." Rebecca looked at her husband, at her son, at the life she had built in this wild, beautiful place. "You were right, you know. That first day when I told you about Thomas, you said the best things in life require a little fear. You were right. I was terrified to let myself love you. But I am so glad I did. So am I, Rebecca. So am I." The years that followed were full and rich. Daniel grew into a bright, curious toddler who followed his father around the ranch like a shadow. Rebecca discovered she was pregnant again when Daniel was 2, and this time she gave birth to twins. A boy they named Samuel and a girl they named Catherine, after Clayton's mother. The ranch prospered under Clayton's management. He was a fair but firm boss, and he treated his workers well, so good men stayed and the work got done. Rebecca's garden expanded until she was able to sell produce in town, bringing in extra income. Together, they built something solid and lasting. When Daniel was 5, they added on to the house, building more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Rebecca finally had the space she needed for her growing family. She also started teaching the children to read and write, determined that they would have education as well as ranch skills. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that tested the cattle and the family's resilience. There was the time Samuel broke his arm falling from a fence, and Rebecca thought her heart would stop from fear. There were disagreements between her and Clayton, normal conflicts that came from two strong-willed people sharing a life. But through it all, their love remained steady. Clayton never forgot to show Rebecca how much he valued her, bringing her flowers or taking on her chores when she was tired. Rebecca made sure Clayton knew he was appreciated, supporting his decisions and being his partner in every sense of the word. On their 5th anniversary, Clayton took Rebecca up to the hilltop where they could see across the valley. The children were with Miguel, who had become their unofficial uncle. "Do you remember the first time I brought you here?" Clayton asked, his arm around her waist as they looked out over the land. "I remember. You were trying to impress me with your ranch. Did it work? Maybe a little." She leaned into him. "Clayton, can I tell you something? Anything?" "I am so grateful for the telegram." He looked down at her, confused. "The telegram that Thomas sent, the one that broke your heart." "Yes." "Because if he had not sent it, if he had not left me standing in that church, I never would have come here. I never would have found you. And I cannot imagine my life without you now. So as much as it hurt at the time, I am grateful. It brought me exactly where I needed to be." Clayton's eyes filled with tears. "I am grateful for it too, and I promise, Rebecca, I will never make you regret choosing me. Every day for the rest of my life I will work to deserve you. You already do, my love. You already do." When Rebecca was 30, she gave birth to their 4th child, another girl they named Rose. By then, Daniel was 7, and the twins were 5. The house was full of noise and laughter, of children running through the rooms and playing in the yard. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely perfect. Clayton proved to be a wonderful father. He was patient with the children, teaching them about the ranch and the land, but he was also gentle, not afraid to show affection or emotion. Rebecca often found him reading to the children or playing games with them, his serious rancher's face transformed by joy. The children adored him. Daniel already talked about running the ranch someday, following in his father's footsteps. Samuel was more interested in the horses, spending hours in the stable. Catherine had inherited her mother's love of cooking and was always underfoot in the kitchen. And baby Rose, well, Rose had everyone wrapped around her tiny finger. As the children grew, Rebecca and Clayton made sure to carve out time for just the two of them. Once a month, Miguel would watch the children and Clayton would take Rebecca into town for dinner, or they would ride out to their special places on the ranch. They talked about everything: the children, the ranch, their dreams for the future. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life," Rebecca said on one of these rides when she was 32 and Clayton was 37. They were at their hilltop again, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "What do you mean?" "I mean all of this. The ranch, the children, you. 10 years ago I thought my life was over, and now I have more than I ever dreamed possible." Clayton pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think we both got exactly what we needed, even if it was not what we thought we wanted at the time. You needed someone who would cherish you the way you deserved. I needed someone to share this life with, to make this ranch into a home. We found each other at exactly the right time. Let us dream together now," Rebecca quoted softly. "Do you remember saying that to me, the night you proposed?" "Of course I remember. It was the most important night of my life. Mine too. And we have, we have dreamed together. Everything we have built here, it came from those dreams. And we are not done dreaming yet. We have years and years ahead of us, Rebecca. Years to watch our children grow, to build this ranch into something even greater, to grow old together. I cannot wait." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Daniel grew into a fine young man, serious and hardworking like his father, but with his mother's kindness. Samuel developed into an excellent horseman, gaining a reputation throughout the territory for his skill. Catherine became an accomplished cook, helping her mother in the kitchen and experimenting with her own recipes. And Rose, the baby, was as spirited and determined as either of her parents. When Rebecca was 38 and Clayton was 43, they celebrated their 15th anniversary. The children had grown. Daniel was now 20 and helping run the ranch. Samuel was 18 and training horses. Catherine was 16 and courting a nice young man from town. And Rose was 11 and already talking about becoming a veterinarian, much to everyone's amusement. That evening, after a family celebration, Clayton and Rebecca sat on their porch, the same spot where they had spent so many evenings over the years. 15 years, Clayton mused. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. I know what you mean. So much has changed, but at the same time, the important things have stayed the same. Like what? Like the way you still bring me wildflowers. Like the way you still kiss me good morning every single day. Like the way you look at me, even after all these years, like I am the most precious thing in the world. Clayton took her hand, raising it to his lips. You are the most precious thing in my world, Rebecca. You and the children and the life we have built. I am a wealthy man, and it has nothing to do with the ranch or the cattle. My wealth is sitting right here beside me. Rebecca felt tears prick at her eyes, though she was smiling. You always know exactly what to say. I only speak the truth." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars come out. Then Rebecca said, "Clayton, do you ever think about how different things could have been? If Thomas had not left me, if I had not seen that notice for a cook, if you had already hired someone else?" "Sometimes. And it terrifies me, honestly. To think that I might never have met you, that I might have lived my whole life without knowing this kind of love. It makes me grateful for every twist of fate that brought us together." "Me too. I used to think I was unlucky, you know. Losing my parents, being abandoned at the altar. But now I realize that I am the luckiest person alive, because all of that pain led me to you. And I would go through it all again, every heartbreak and disappointment, if I knew it would end with us sitting here together." Clayton stood and pulled her to her feet, gathering her into his arms. "Dance with me. There is no music. We will make our own music." So they danced on the porch under the stars, humming softly to each other, holding tight to the love that had sustained them through 15 years, and would sustain them through 50 more. Rebecca rested her head on Clayton's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and felt completely and utterly at peace. This was where she belonged. This was home. Not just the ranch or the house, but here in Clayton's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together. She had stopped grieving her lost dreams long ago, because the reality they had created together was so much better than anything she could have imagined. As the years continued, the Double Cross Ranch became one of the most successful operations in the Arizona Territory. Daniel took over more and more of the daily operations, working side by side with his father. Samuel established a horse training business that brought in additional income. Catherine married her sweetheart and had children of her own, making Rebecca and Clayton grandparents. And Rose, true to her childhood dreams, went east to school and became one of the first female veterinarians in the territory. Clayton and Rebecca aged gracefully together, their love deepening with each passing year. They became fixtures in Gila City, known for their generosity and kindness. Rebecca still cooked, though Daniel's wife had taken over much of the daily meal preparation. Clayton still worked the ranch, though his children had relieved him of the hardest tasks. On their 25th anniversary, the family threw them a huge celebration. Friends and neighbors came from all over the territory. There were speeches and toasts, laughter and tears. Daniel stood up and thanked his parents for showing him what a good marriage looked like. Catherine read a poem she had written about love and commitment. Samuel presented them with a pair of beautiful matched horses. And Rose, who had come all the way from medical school for the occasion, gave them a photograph album filled with memories from their years together. But the best moment came late in the evening when everyone else had left and Clayton and Rebecca were alone on their porch once more. 25 years, Rebecca said, leaning against her husband. "Can you believe it? Some days no. Some days it feels like we just met yesterday. Other days, I cannot remember a time when you were not the center of my world." "I have been thinking about something," Rebecca said. "About that day I arrived here, scared and heartbroken and certain I would never be happy again. If I could go back and talk to that woman, I would tell her that everything is going to be all right, more than all right. I would tell her that she is about to meet the love of her life, that she is going to build a beautiful family and have a wonderful life. I would tell her not to be afraid." Clayton was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I would tell her something else." "What?" "I would tell her thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to start over. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for loving me and building this life with me. Thank you for making all my dreams come true." Rebecca turned in his arms, looking up at his dear face. It was older now, lined with years of sun and hard work, but to her, He was just as handsome as the day they met. Clayton Fletcher, I love you more today than I did 25 years ago. And I will love you even more 25 years from now. Promise. I promise. You are stuck with me, Cowboy. He laughed, that wonderful sound that never failed to make her heart sing. There is nowhere else I would rather be stuck, Mrs. Fletcher. They kissed as the stars came out overhead. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful and lasting. Rebecca thought about the telegram that had shattered her heart all those years ago, and she smiled. She had wasted so much time grieving lost dreams, not realizing that better dreams were waiting just around the corner. Sometimes the best blessings were the ones you never saw coming. Sometimes the worst moments led to the best outcomes. And sometimes, when you were brave enough to hope again, you found something more precious than you ever imagined. The years continued to flow like the Gila River, steady and sure. Clayton and Rebecca celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. Their children gave them more grandchildren, filling the ranch with new generations. They attended weddings and baptisms, celebrations and gatherings. They weathered storms and droughts, good years and hard years, always together, always united. When Rebecca was 55 and Clayton was 60, they took a trip back east to visit Rose, who was now an established veterinarian with her own practice. It was Rebecca's first time leaving the Arizona territory in over 30 years, and she marveled at how much the world had changed. There were trains and telegraphs, electric lights and telephones. The century was drawing to a close, and a new one was dawning. But for all the wonders of the modern world, Rebecca found herself eager to return home. Home to the ranch, to the land they had worked and loved for so many years. Home to the place where she had found herself and built a life beyond her wildest dreams. On the train ride back, as the familiar landscape of the territory came into view, Clayton took her hand. "No regrets?" he asked, echoing the question he had asked on their wedding night so many years ago. "Not a single one," Rebecca replied, her answer the same as it had been then and would always be. They lived out their days in contentment and love, surrounded by family and friends. The Double Cross Ranch thrived under Daniel's management, and Samuel's reputation as a horse trainer spread far and wide. Catherine raised a large family in town, and Rose made groundbreaking contributions to veterinary medicine. But through it all, the heart of the ranch remained the same. Clayton and Rebecca, partners in every sense of the word, still dancing on the porch under the stars, still dreaming together, still deeply, profoundly in love. Rebecca lived to be 78 years old, healthy and active almost to the end. She passed peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, with Clayton holding her hand. Clayton followed her 6 months later. Their children said he died of a broken heart, unable to live without the woman who had been his partner for over 40 years. But before he went, he gathered his family around him. "Your mother," he said, his voice weak but clear, "was the greatest blessing of my life. She took a broken-down cowboy and showed him what love really meant. She built a home out of a house and a family out of nothing. Everything good in my life came from her." He paused, looking at each of his children in turn. "Love each other. Be good to each other. Remember that the best dreams are the ones you build together. That is what your mother taught me, and it is the most important lesson I can pass on to you." Those were his last words. He died that night, and his family knew without a doubt that he had gone to be with Rebecca, to continue their dance in whatever came next. They buried Clayton and Rebecca side by side on the hilltop, where they had spent so many evenings watching the sunset, overlooking the ranch they had built together. The entire territory came out for the funeral, testament to the impact they had made on everyone who knew them. On their shared headstone, Daniel had inscribed, Clayton Fletcher, 1853–1923, Rebecca Norton Fletcher, 1859–1937, beloved parents and grandparents they dreamed together, and that, in the end, was their legacy. Not just the ranch or the children or the success they had achieved, but the love they had shared. A love that had started with grief and grown into joy. A love that had transformed two wounded people into something stronger together than they ever could have been apart. Rebecca had come to the Double Cross Ranch thinking her life was over, her dreams destroyed. But Clayton had shown her that endings could be beginnings, that broken hearts could heal, and that the best dreams were the ones you built with someone who truly loved you. She had grieved her lost dreams of marriage until the cowboy said, "Let us dream together now." And together, they had built a dream that lasted a lifetime and beyond, a legacy of love that would continue through generations. Their story became legend in Gila City and throughout the Arizona Territory. It was told and retold, a testament to the power of hope and love and second chances. Young people facing heartbreak would hear about Rebecca, who had found love when she thought all hope was lost. Men would hear about Clayton, who had recognized a treasure when he saw one and had been patient enough to win her heart. The Double Cross Ranch continued for generations, passing from Daniel to his children and grandchildren. Each generation added their own stories, their own dreams, but the foundation remained the same. The love that Clayton and Rebecca had built, solid and enduring. And sometimes, on clear nights when the stars were bright, ranch hands swore they could see two figures dancing on the old porch, hear the echo of laughter and whispered words of love. Whether it was ghosts or memories or just the wind, no one could say for certain. But everyone agreed. It was a fitting testament to a love that had never truly ended, only transformed. Rebecca Norton had arrived at the Double Cross Ranch with nothing but a broken heart and a desperate need for a fresh start. She had left a legacy of love that would endure for generations. She had shown that the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best outcomes. She had proven that it is never too late to dream again. And Clayton Fletcher, the cowboy who had taken a chance on a heartbroken woman, had been rewarded with a love that made every moment worthwhile. He had shown that patience and kindness could heal even the deepest wounds. He had demonstrated that real love was not about grand gestures, but about showing up every day, choosing your partner over and over again. Together, they had created something beautiful and lasting. Together, they had turned grief into joy, loss into gain, endings into beginnings. Together, they had proved that the best dreams are the ones you build with someone you love, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. Their love story was not perfect or without challenges. There were hard times and disagreements, struggles and sorrows, but through it all they held fast to each other and to the dreams they had built together. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The wind whispered through the cottonwoods along the creek, carrying with it the echo of their story. The ranch continued to thrive, built on the foundation they had laid. And somewhere, in the great mystery beyond this life, Rebecca and Clayton continued their eternal dance, together as they had always been, as they would always be. Their story was complete. Their dreams had been fulfilled. Their love had endured beyond death itself. And that, truly, was the happily ever after they both deserved.